Good evening and welcome to the Real Logic Show. I'm your host Charlie, and here we deep dive into all things movies, from the biggest of blockbusters to the hidden gems, figuring out what works, what doesn't, and why. So grab your coffee and let's talk movies. Marvel doesn't usually surprise me anymore, but Wonder Man actually did. Not because it's loud, not because it's universe shattering, but because it's weirdly human. This is a show about ego, identity, performance, and what happens when someone who wants to be seen suddenly has the power to be impossible to ignore. On the surface, Wonder Man seems like another B tier Marvel character gets a chance at a superhero show, but that's not really what this series was trying to portray. Simon Williams isn't just a superhero, he's an actor, a man whose entire life revolves around being perceived. And Marvel leans into that idea pretty hard. Performance versus authenticity, image versus self, and just how fragile identity becomes when your entire worth is measured by applause. The show isn't asking, what if a normal guy got powers? It's asking, what if someone so desperate for validation suddenly has the ability to become a symbol? The strongest thing Wonder Man has going for it is Simon himself. Yahya Abdul Mateen II plays him with this constant tension, confidence on the surface, insecurity underneath. You can feel how badly Simon wants the matter, and that's what makes the character work. He's not noble like Captain America. He's not tortured like Daredevil. He's insecure, performative, sometimes selfish, and Marvel doesn't sanitize that. There are moments where Simon is genuinely unlikable, and instead of fixing that, the show sits with it. That honesty, that's rare for modern Marvel. Now here's where Wonder Man gets a little interesting. It seems like Marvel is slowly interrogating itself. Superheroes becoming brands, icons, intellectual property, and Wonder Man is becoming exactly that, while slowly losing everything that made him who he is and who he actually is. There's a meta layer here that works surprisingly well, especially when you realize this is a show about Hollywood, made by Hollywood, in a franchise that's struggling with its own image. It isn't subtle, but it is intentional. That said, this show isn't perfect. The pacing can be uneven, some episodes linger a little too long on ideas that don't fully evolve, and if you're expecting big MCU stakes, multiverse chaos, or constant action, you might walk away disappointed. This isn't a spectacle first series, it's a character study wearing a Marvel logo, and Marvel hasn't fully trained its audience to accept that just yet. One thing that I think is worth mentioning throughout this show was how Marvel seemed to have been trying to give you a glimpse behind the mind and psychology of Simon himself, where Simon feels like this outcast in a world where everyone fits in. This is kind of the first time the MCU has shown us that humans are starting to have different feelings and emotions towards superheroes and superhumans. There was an accident that happened. There's a little flashback in the show that took up a whole episode, which I thought was a little much personally, but ultimately they did get their message across. But just for a 8 episode show, I don't know if it should have took up an entire episode. But basically, to sum it up for you, there was another superhero who became an actor, and they called him Doorman, and people were able to like go through his body. Well, he ends up swallowing a guy like in the void, and they never find him again. So it was after that moment when they made it clear that no superheroes will be allowed in film or TV or any forms of cinema, as especially as a paid gig. So Simon, after knowing this, has to kind of hide his identity and a part of himself. And Trevor Slattery seems to try and bring out this other part of him and tell him that he's more than just his abilities. And now that dynamic is one of the best parts about this show. We haven't seen a character duo like this since Bucky and Sam. And I'm not lying when I say it. That's how good this character duo really was. I was caught smiling watching this show several times, especially whether it be them reading lines or going on their crazy missions, chasing down a GoPro. I really enjoyed watching this show, and this is the best performance we've seen of Trevor Slattery. Iron Man 3 definitely had some creative differences with how they decided to go about that. And then we see him briefly in Shang-Chi, but that was just a little like gag. There was nothing crazy. I was very impressed with his performance in this show. And another thing worth mentioning that I really enjoyed was, I have a big passion for this industry itself. So to be able to see that behind the scenes first look at what it takes to be an actor, that coming of age story, that hero's journey that Simon does go down, Trevor also goes down in order to land this big role in Wonder Man. I loved it. I loved the consequences due to some of his actions, because Simon's got some crazy ways of handling his emotions, to say the least. But I really enjoyed this show. Wonder Man isn't going to be everyone's favorite Marvel show, but that's kind of the point. It's smaller, stranger, more introspective, and honestly, that might be exactly what the MCU needs right now. Not another god, not another multiversal threat, just a man trying to figure out whether the version of himself the world loves is the same as the one he can live with. And that's Wonder Man. If you've seen Wonder Man, let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you could, like, comment, and subscribe, I would appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you on the next one. Peace.